On the radar with the CBS 17 Storm Team.
Welcome to On the Radar, your weekly look at our weather world exclusively here on CBS 17 Plus. I'm Wes Hohenstein.
I'm Meteorologist Rachel Duensing. Wes, welcome back. You were sort of traveling the world for a couple of weeks there.
It was nice. Big birthday for my wife, and we spent some time in Germany, Italy, and Greece, and I am overweight and under budgeted now, so I got to come back to work to lose weight and to make some money back.
I highly doubt that you were overweight, but I do believe that you probably had some amazing food, and I'm super jealous.
At least 2 gelato stops every day in Italy.
Well,
you have to.
I mean, it is. I feel like that is not even an unwritten rule. Like, it's probably a law in Italy that you have to at least stop twice a day for gelato.
And in Germany, there's a Hohenstein castle that we visited, and then of course in Germany their beers are about as tall
as big as your face.
And then Greece was just amazing and didn't go a day without a Greek salad. So like I said, I ate my way through Europe, but it's always great to come home. Even though it was 100 degrees for a couple days.
I was about ready to say, how hot was it? How hot was it in Europe? Because I don't want to say you missed out on the heat here in North Carolina, because it was definitely hot when you got back. But
I would have to say gone the whole month of June. So Germany was actually really comfortable. 70s, we had long sleeves on. Then you go south down to Italy, and you're 90s every day. You know, most Italian cities, big, lots of concrete. Like our big cities, they're heat islands, and we walked like 5 miles through each of those cities every day with 90-degree heat. So I may have sweated off some weight there, but again, I made up for it in all the food we ate.
I was about ready to say, at least you were walking and sweating it out at least. But it doesn't matter where you were, apparently, because except for Germany, where it was comfortable. But, I mean, it was hot. And, of course, here in North Carolina was no exception. It has been a big weather story. And, of course, we definitely need to take some time and talk about that.
Yeah, so as we're recording this, the month of June 2025 is wrapping up. We're getting ready for July. On average, July is usually the month we dread. It is the hottest month of the year for Central North Carolina. And we're always happy when July is over, but this year we're happy that June is over. Looks like it's going to be the hottest month on record. Our records go back 140 years, but look at that map. So 1, 2, 3 days, only 3 out of 30, Rachel, that were below average. We had 27 at or above average, including 25 straight. That included those 2 100-degree days. It included 9 days at 96 or above. I mean, we know July's hot, but June usually isn't this hot. This was record-setting.
And it really was. And we talk about record-breaking and record-setting. You mentioned it already that this is going to be, at least for now, the hottest June on record here in Central North Carolina. It managed to beat out 2010, which was a very hot June here in Central North Carolina. But so that one was 81.5 degrees. So when we talk about the average temperature, it's the morning low as well as the afternoon high sort of averaged out. And so that's what this is for the entire month. And 2025 this year, 81.6 degrees. So yeah, definitely now the hottest or the warmest, however you want to slice it, June on record. It's not the kind of record that we're wanting.
And what's significant, or what sticks out to me, is that we only had 3 cool days, and they were way back at the beginning of the month. You know, usually you get a hot month, you get some record-setting temperatures, there's something sprinkled in that's cooler. We didn't have any of that, so it was a prolonged hot event, which is also very rare for us.
And even stepping outside, in the last day of June, and the morning was still definitely very warm. It was still low 80s for some a few hours after sunrise. And you kind of step outside and you're like, wow, this actually doesn't feel so bad. And it just goes to show you just how hot the temperatures were, because it's not just the afternoon high temperatures, it's the morning low temperatures as well. And people always say that that's actually a big indicator of showing just how much our climate has been warming over the past few decades is our morning temperatures are now a lot warmer than they used to be. And that's really hard for lower income people, the elderly, people who maybe can't afford to run their air conditioning as much because you don't have any time to cool off overnight. Normally, we go to bed in the evening or whenever it is, and that's your time, your body's time to reset, to relax. And if it's 80 degrees at night, you're really not cooling down all that often.
Yeah.
With that being said, we had some very hot afternoons as well. We had 2 days where we broke high temperature records. And both of those days were actually 100 degrees. I mean, it was just miserable hot out there.
It's strange that we're looking forward to July, partially because there's no way it could be as hot as June, right? Right. But also we've got a cold front coming. And the bad thing about July is our June electric bill is going to show up in the mail, and that's going to be painful.
Yeah, it really is. So yeah, those are the 2 records that we either tied or broke: June 23rd, June 24th, back to back, both 100 degree days. And yeah, June 23rd, just apparently that's now the days for 100 degrees because that's when we tied the record last year when we hit 100 degrees. Alrighty, so sometimes we didn't fortunately have this here in Central North Carolina, but sometimes it gets a little hot and things start to happen on our area roadway. So we're going to check out this video here. This is actually from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, when they had their heat wave. And you're going to see something that's pretty spectacular. So just watch this video right here. You can see the road there. It's kind of a little buckled. They have some cones out, and now you're going for a ride. I don't know why. I really hope that person's car is okay. But I have to admit, I laughed really hard the first time I saw this video.
And then the 4-wheel drive comes in after and just kind of gently, this little, it looks like a Toyota Corolla, just ramps over it. Thankfully, there's like 3 car dealerships there, so they're going to be able to get it fixed. But can you imagine if this was like an 18-wheeler?
Right.
I mean, that could have been bad.
It could have been so bad. And even then, like, that's a little car, little Toyota, Toyota Camry or Corolla. I mean, it got air.
Yeah.
I mean, it launched. And imagine you're not totally paying attention. We all kind of go on autopilot sometimes. We're just driving and not thinking. Yep. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, the road is like 3 feet higher than it was. Like, I swear the road was not like this when I was driving.
Yeah. And look, it's a Toyota dealership next to the Honda. You saw it in the other shot. If I'm Toyota marketing, I am calling this car owner, and we are making a commercial out of this.
I mean, it looks like it didn't have a lot of damage. So, I mean, shout out Toyota.
Right. That's right.
But that's another, obviously it is kind of funny, but it's a good indicator of just how hot things were, Wes.
Yeah, so the science behind it, remember, most of what we drive on is either concrete or asphalt. Asphalt, tar and oil and the black rocks, and when they get hot, they kind of melt a little, and they'll make ruts in the road if it gets extremely hot. But concrete, after it hardens up, it's a rock. So you have 2 giant slabs of rock that have this little joint in between them. Usually it's some kind of caulking or that papery stuff that we've got in our driveways. So we've got 2 rocks next to each other, and in the wintertime, that gap expands. I'm over-exaggerating here. In the summertime, as the concrete expands, that joint gets closer together. Well, if it gets too hot and they get too close together, what are they going to do? They're going to pop up, and that's what happened right there in that picture.
And it can sometimes be the opposite in winter. Like I said, they kind of move around a little bit, and that's how we can get potholes in the winter as well. Obviously, snow, ice, and rain can play a part of that. But yeah, this is definitely an example of just how hot it has been. I mean, you just see rocks flying. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
nobody was hurt.
Nobody was hurt, so
laugh.
I guess it's okay that we can laugh now. I guess sort of a hard pivot from that, talking about no one was hurt. We've had a lot of really powerful thunderstorms lately. And remember, thunderstorms don't have to be severe to be dangerous or deadly, because lightning has been prolific. That's not the right word.
Prolific.
There's been prolific. Oh my gosh.
I make up words all the time.
Wow. I was not an English major, folks. I had a Bachelor of Science.
We'll cut that out of the live air version.
But anyway, there's been a lot of lightning with these thunderstorms lately, and it's been very dangerous.
Yes. Sorry, I thought we were gonna roll that story. So you get all this heat and humidity, these powerful storms that just get taller and taller and taller in the atmosphere, lots of rubbing together, and we had hundreds upon thousands of lightning strikes. And, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with lightning in North Carolina. My 2-story home several years ago took a lightning hit. Thankfully, happened during a torrential downpour, which kind of put the fire out that the lightning started. But there was a 4-foot wide hole in my roof. It blew out my air conditioner. It messed up the whole electrical system in the house. And strangely enough, under the house, the gas pipe that comes into my house was being held there with a little metal rivet with a staple on it. The lightning traveled all the way from the top of the roof down under the house and came out, exploded out in that staple, and it broke the gas line, and we had a gas leak because of it. Lightning is so powerful, does such strange things when it comes in contact with cars and houses, and we lived that a few years ago. We were all okay, and the house was repaired, but just you never like to mess with lightning.
Yeah, lightning is scary. Honestly, lightning probably freaks me out more than most weather phenomena that we have to deal with. But yeah, our own meteorologist Laura Smith spent a little time talking about lightning and the dangers of lightning. We want to share a little bit about that.
Just see that lightning strike from our Whitley Law Firm weather camera at Segra Stadium.
Summertime storms are popping up, and that means lots of lightning. North Carolina ranks in the top 10 for most lightning-related deaths. With many of us getting outside, safety is key.
Ton of lightning out of these storms.
Wednesday, severe storms produced thousands of lightning strikes. A strike sparked this house fire in Youngsville. Remember when thunder roars, go indoors. Meteorologist Wes Hohenstein.
Notice that they are not necessarily always around the rainmaker, sometimes 10, 20 miles away.
When a thunderstorm is nearby, you are not safe outside. Seek shelter in a car or building. But if you're caught outside in a storm, crouch low to the ground, feet together, and head down. In a group, spread out. Here's where to avoid. Inside, stay away from electrical equipment, plumbing, windows, and doors. Outside, stay away from open areas, tall objects, and water. Lightning killed 12 people in 7 states last year. This year's number sits at 4, including a K-9 prison officer in eastern North Carolina earlier this year hit while fishing. If a storm is nearby, remember, stay indoors, wait 30 minutes after the last thunder. I'm meteorologist Laura Smith for CBS 17 News.
Thank you, Laura, for that. Again, lightning, your garden variety thunderstorm has lightning, hence thunder and lightning. So you're not always going to get a severe thunderstorm warning for just your afternoon thunderstorm, but we know that those are also incredibly dangerous. So here's some of the lightning related deaths. If we look back from 2006 all the way to this year, it's pretty easy to see when most of those lightning deaths occur. It's usually in the spring and through the summer into early fall when the weather is either really nice to get outside or it's summer break, everyone's going fishing, everyone's out at the beach, they're playing golf. So really be careful anytime you're outside during thunderstorms, but especially during the warmer months when thunderstorms are also just more common. They're going to happen all the time.
Yes, we don't have the energy in the atmosphere in the winter, so there's not as many thunderstorms, so it makes sense that there's not as many deaths. But I mean, those cells a couple weeks ago were producing thousands upon thousands of strikes in a short period of time. And sometimes you do everything you can, but I remember a few years ago in the Cary Crossroads Mall area, there was a thunderstorm, and it was as simple as someone was walking out from a store. I think it was a Michael's or an Old Navy. They were walking across the parking lot to their car, just trying to get out of the rain, and it was during that run from the store to the car that they got struck by lightning. So, we take a lot of stuff for granted, but it could be that simple and that random, a lightning strike.
Yeah, it really can. Last year, we had, I believe, around 12 deaths due to lightning strikes. Obviously, the total is a little bit lower this year. You heard Laura say it in her piece. We have 4 deaths related to lightning so far this year. Unfortunately, one of them was in North Carolina. That person was fishing. That man actually was fishing. Last year, of those 12 deaths, none of them were at least occurred in North Carolina. So that is some good news, but unfortunately we had one this year. Most lightning strikes are male. Most lightning related deaths, I should say, are male. Of the 203 people who have died due to lightning since 2015, 159 of them were men.
Wow.
So it's kind of a sad, interesting statistic. But of the 4 who have passed away this year, 2 were fishing, including the one in North Carolina. 1 was golfing, and 1 was simply standing in the water at the beach in Florida. So yeah, it is hard sometimes because you might see a storm off in the distance, you hear a little bit of thunder, and you think, oh, it's so far away. But like we saw you pointing out in the story, and any of us who just sit and watch radar all the time, lightning can strike from really, really far away.
20 to 30 miles from the thunderstorm, you could have a lightning strike. And remember, I tell my students this every time I talk to them in classes about weather. Lightning is an inch wide, which is about half the length of your pointer finger, but it's 6 times hotter than the surface of the sun. So it's a lot packed into that small inch. And it just occurred to me that, I'm not the only one that's got a lightning story here at the station. Our own Angela Taylor, she was flying 10, 15 years ago, and her plane got struck by lightning. So I don't know if it's something about the people that work here, but she tells the story how it got really, really quiet on the airplane for a couple seconds before things started back up and returned to normal. But airplanes are designed to get hit by lightning, thankfully.
Yeah.
But such a scary situation.
And so are your vehicles. If you can get inside your car or a vehicle when a thunderstorm is around, get inside, roll up the windows. Cars are designed to be something kind of like an airplane where it's called a Faraday cage, and it's meant to take all of that electricity and just sort of harmlessly take it around and then, get it away from you. So get inside a building is the safest place. You don't want to be outside at all, whether it's a vehicle or inside. I also believe Angela has actually been struck by lightning, like actually struck.
That explains a lot.
She said there's a part of her hair that just doesn't straighten anymore,
Right.
and she thinks that's where
Could
she
be.
got struck. Alrighty, so obviously we've been talking a lot about the serious part of our weather lately, which is, the heat and the lightning, but there was something else that sort of lit up our skies last week. Got a lot of people talking on social media, and we are going to talk more about that after we take a quick break.
On the radar with the CBS 17 Storm Team.
Welcome back to On the Radar, along with Rachel Duensing. I'm Wes Hohenstein in the CBS 17 Plus studios. All right, so July is upon us. We are going to be talking about the holiday, of course. I think everyone's been thinking about that for months and months. But before we totally leave everything coming from the sky, a lot of people always ask us, Rachel, meteorology, how come that's not the study of meteors? Well,
Right.
It started back years and years and years ago with Aristotle. He came up with the word, like so many of our English language words, stuff coming from the sky. And it kind of morphed into, well, guess what else comes from the sky? Rain and snow and hurricanes and tornadoes. So meteorology, a word that Aristotle created, kind of became the study of anything coming from the sky. And of course, that focuses a lot about weather. But we actually had a meteor sighting across the southeast recently.
Yeah, and it got a lot of people talking all over social media and really pretty much everywhere. And so here's some of the collections of that, and we're going to show you some of these images. You may have seen them yourself, but of course we want to go through them, and we're going to kind of talk over them a little bit. So this is from Brian Jennings Updike, and there you go. You just saw it right there.
Yeah, so it happened just after lunchtime in the middle of the week. Normally you don't see stuff like this during the day.
Right.
Normally it's at night. So this is a very rare occurrence. The following day, NASA released their findings on this, saying that the meteor was first seen at an altitude 48 miles above Oxford, Georgia, moving at 30,000 miles per hour. So this thing was cooking. So it's going fast. It hits our atmosphere and essentially explodes. And that happened about 27 miles above West Forest, Georgia. And that released the energy of about 20,000 tons of TNT. It was about 3 feet in diameter and weighed more than 2 pounds, 2,000 pounds, and by the time it burned up in our atmosphere, the only thing left was a small little pebble that happened to make it through the roof and ceiling of an unsuspecting person's home.
Yeah, and that was what you saw there at just about, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds ago, where it looked like a big hole in the ceiling and then there's like debris on the floor. That's what that was from. The emergency managers there that was in Georgia were like, hey, the homeowners noticed something fly through their roof. Also happened to be right after they heard a big boom. So they put 2 and 2 together. Yep, there it is. So that's what it looks like when a meteorite flies through your roof and just kind of leaves stuff all over the
Talk
linoleum.
about bad luck.
Yeah, and it's just, and I believe these areas went on to have thunderstorms later on in the day. So imagine you have a hole in your roof and then you have a leak.
Right.
Yeah. So
And that meteorite, which is what it's called once it's left over and makes it to the surface, they're very valuable. I mean, there are people out there that hunt these things down, and they're supposedly worth a lot of money.
okay.
So if
Do I
you've
need
got
to go,
any spare time,
do I need to go meteorite hunting?
yeah. So
That should be my side
meteorite,
gig?
that's what it happened once it enters the atmosphere. It's a meteor as it enters the atmosphere. A meteorite, if it survives the trip to the ground, if it's especially bright, we call it a fireball. This one specifically called a bolide meteor because it was especially bright. Of course, we know that because it showed up in the middle of the day.
And talking about how bright it was, that's another thing too, was that this was picked up on weather satellite. It wasn't just dash cams and falling through homes. Like, it was bright enough that we could see it on weather satellites, and that's what this image shows. That bright little ball there east of Atlanta was that meteor. It was actually picked up through something on the weather satellite called it was the lightning detector.
Right.
So basically it was so bright that it thought it was lightning, but it was the meteor.
Yeah,
Or the
traditional
meteorite.
satellite that we all recognize because we can see the clouds. And if we turn on a certain setting on the satellite, we can see thunderstorms, the lightning, the flash they provide. In fact, if you look at the top of that graphic, in the western part of North Carolina, you can see a flash of lightning. But that flash down in Atlanta, remember, they didn't have any thunderstorms at that time. So not lightning, that is the meteor exploding just after lunchtime in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, definitely got a lot of people talking. And, a lot of people are out on the roads. Obviously, we're able to see this. A lot of people are going to be out on the roads as well because it is about time for 4th of July. Everyone's favorite hot holiday. Last year, it was like really hot. We see there 101 degrees. Remember, I was eating ice cream out at Dick's Park, and as soon as I got it, it just immediately melted.
Yeah, so last year, the hottest 4th of July on record here in central North Carolina. Sadly, we are not going to be as cool as 1968, where the high on the 4th of July in 1968 was only 69 degrees.
that best
This year,
4th of July.
we're also not expecting nearly 5 inches of rain. And the average this time of year is 91 in the afternoon and 70 in the morning. It's going to be closer to that, thankfully, than the 101 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather take a typical 4th of July, which, again, we expect to be hot and humid and all of that. But last year, that 101 was pretty miserable, if we're going to be honest. But yeah, hopefully we can stay a little bit closer to that this year. But
And last year was also the year where the Raleigh fireworks kind of got messed up.
yeah.
We had some thunderstorms. They supposedly canceled. Everyone started to leave. Then they accidentally launched them. There's still no clear explanation of what really happened. But let's hope they get that right this year.
I have a feeling that all the barbecues and the fireworks displays and all of that, I think they're going to be okay this
Right.
year. We're not expecting as much rain. But speaking of fireworks, obviously there is a science to that as well. Fireworks have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and fortunately we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. But I jumped the gun a little bit. We also want to talk about more historical 4th of July stuff. We
Yes.
don't often have to deal with tropical weather, but every now and then we do.
Yeah, so obviously the hurricane season started on the 1st of June. We've had 2 named storms already. But usually early on in the season, we don't get a lot of stuff here in North Carolina, let
Right.
alone hurricanes. But there was actually an occurrence where there was a 4th of July hurricane. And it didn't happen way back in the 1900s or anything like that. It happened rather recently, back
Yeah.
in 2014.
Yeah, so this is Hurricane Arthur. Started out sort of just as this tropical wave off the coast. Believe it was off of a stalled out cold front.
Right.
Kind of like something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We don't want to, put two and two together, but it started out sort of as this tropical wave and then quickly strengthened into a hurricane and actually hit parts of the Outer Banks as a Category 2. It's technically late July 3rd and then was moving through early July 4th, but it still brought impacts to the Outer Banks, and it's the only hurricane that has hit the state of North Carolina on the 4th of July.
It's also the earliest hurricane to make landfall in our state in recorded history. The old one was back in 1901. It was an unnamed one. That hit July 11, but this one, July 3rd into 4th, Arthur, the earliest landfalling hurricane in North Carolina history. I say earliest on the calendar. And like you said, yeah, it was a leftover frontal boundary, and that's something that we might have happen after the 4th of July this year off the southeast coast. So that's something we'll have to watch, and we're already on the C named storm this year. Arthur, obviously, the first named storm that season.
Yeah, so fortunately no hurricanes this year, no rain. It's going to be hot, but sort of typically so, and we should be able to enjoy our wonderful fireworks. Now we can get to the science of fireworks. I got really excited to talk about this, so sorry I skipped over
This
the
is
hurricane,
something
but
I did not know, that all the periodic table was going to come up and led to the colors of fireworks. So I learned something new here in this one.
Yeah, so all of these different elements, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce all of them. I'm just gonna be totally honest, I was terrible at chemistry. But all of these chemicals and elements are what give the fireworks their bright color. So you have something like calcium, which gives it a little bit more of an orangey color, or sodium, which is more yellow, barium, green, copper, more blue. So yeah, there's definitely a science to fireworks, not just, lighting them off in a safe way, but also the beautiful colors that we are able to see as well. So,
And let's hope that we'll be able to get everything off without a hitch this year. We've been doing a lot of stories on people going to South Carolina to buy their fireworks, a lot of stories on the tariffs, but there's a science story on fireworks for this year.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what we love to do on the radar. We just love to talk about all the science and everyday random things. All right, we are nearing the end of our time with you here on the Radar, and as we always like to do, we want to end it with super sunsets. And Wes, I'm honestly a little surprised that these are not all your photos from your vacation.
Well, I've already bored you with a few stories. I did take some super sunsets. Maybe we'll do those next time. But let's go overseas for our first one. This is from Dubai.
Wow.
So John has a super sunset. He starts us off from Dubai. I love it when we get stuff from really far away, and you can't get much farther away than the United Arab Emirates. We'll come back a little closer to the United States. This is Long Island.
Yeah.
Paul, one of our great photographers. This is actually a super sunrise.
Gorgeous.
That is, what's it called? The Point Lighthouse on Long Island.
Wow.
It is the fourth oldest active lighthouse in the United States on the eastern tip of Long Island. It was commissioned by George Washington.
That's amazing.
Okay,
I love
first
that.
president, a little while ago, 1792, and it was finished. It's 200 and almost 230 years old, so that's cool.
That's awesome.
Back down here to North Carolina, Danny from Dorchester captured this super sunset. This was from earlier this year. Sometimes it's as easy as going right outside your back door. Let's go back somewhere tropical. This is Roatan, Honduras, a little island north of the mainland. Bruce was down there. He lives in Durham and was vacationing down in Roatan. And then finally, we'll end up in Wake Forest. Debbie Butler with this super sunset from just a few months ago. Don't forget, I show your super sunsets every night on CBS 17 News at 11. If you've got a good one, send it my way to sendit@cbs17.com.
Yeah, so those are some amazing views from across the world as well as right here at home. And we hope that we put something interesting on your radar as well as you get ready to celebrate the 4th of July holiday. We hope you are staying cool and having safe, fun with your friends and your family. And thanks for spending a little time with us here on the Radar.